Welcome to the MMHP in the 989, channeling all styles and eras of Michigan music history. Recorded live from the Michigan Rock Legends Hall of Fame, located inside the Bay County Historical Museum.
From the city by the bay.
Featuring Dr. J, Fred Reif, Mr. Mike, and your host, Scott Baker. Brought to you by the 989 Podcast Network and the Michigan Rock Legends Hall of Fame, located at the Bay County Historical Society Museum at 321 Washington Avenue, Bay City, Michigan.
Well, we're here at the Michigan Legends Rock Hall of Fame here in downtown Bay City at the museum. Here on a very windy 5-inch throwing snow kind of day where we've had a little bit of all aspects from sunshine to clouds to everything. It's typical Michigan in February here in 2024.
Yeah, but I like it, the fact that the roads are clear.
Already, yeah.
Yeah, they melted down. And
they said it's going to be icy
sidewalks
tonight,
are looking pretty good, too.
Yeah.
You know, so.
Both bridges in operation.
Yeah. That's it. Independence Bridge open today.
We are
At least half of it.
True. Fully loaded Dr. J, Sir Fred, and Mr. Mike in the house. How you guys doing?
Real good?
Good.
We had a note come out from a listener that enjoyed one of our shows, the Levi and Hookerman show of all of them, and he says, I booked that or put that together or knew of it, and he hit me up with this information. Come to find out, we had to have this man on the show. He's been connected to many of Mount Pleasant's biggest shows, or at least knows of from the 80s onward, a lot of the history as well. He has a photography, he has the collection of the catalogs of it and everything. Mr. Steve Swart's in the house. How are you doing, Steve?
Greetings, I'm doing well.
Thanks for coming on the show to give us a little bit of the mid-Michigan history from Mount Pleasant. There's a lot of folklore out of that town.
Yeah, there's a lot of weird stuff that happened back in the 80s in the music scene.
You know, you went to Central Michigan during the 80s?
Yes.
I saw something that you sent us that had the Chippewa yearbook from 1986. Is that the year that you graduated?
I was done in 90, but that yearbook was the year following a benefit called Save the Waves, which is when the CMU trustees or some folks decided they were going to change the format of 91 Rock FM to Top 40. And people freaked out. And so they had this benefit at the Foolery, Tom's Foolery downtown Mount Pleasant, called Save the Waves. And that was a big controversial situation, but there's some good photography from that benefit on the internet on a page called the Legacy of Harvey's Foolery on Facebook. It's a page, The Legacy of Harvey's Foolery.
I'm going to send a link to that for our show when we particularly do this so people know it when we announce you. But the Harvey's Foolery became Tom Foolery's, which became Rubbles, right?
Yes, and it was always called Tom's Foolery, but now in retrospect we call it Harvey's Foolery because it was such a rich cultural time with a lot of weird cultural stuff that happened down there.
Yeah.
So this is a bar that was right in the downtown area of Mount Pleasant. Yeah, see, I attended CMU, but I was back there in the 60s, and there wasn't much. And Mount Pleasant was a very different town then. So we had the Bird. I don't know, is that still around?
Yeah, that's a popular place.
And there was the M&M bar. They called Mangy Martha's. That was near the Bird.
Well, it sounds like a beautiful spot.
Yeah, right. That was kind of the Bird was sort of the upper crust and the Mangy Martha's was the lower crust of the bar scene downtown. So I wonder if the Tom's Foolery took over Mangy Martha's, maybe.
I don't remember that back that far.
That's right. Back in the dark ages of Mount Pleasant.
Yeah, I was still waiting for the bus out in the country with my cello or something.
Okay. So it sounded like there was a lot of music there. I couldn't believe that some of the names said Gatemouth Brown and Fishbone and the Dead Kennedys.
The Dead Milkmen. I
okay. All right. I was going to say, wow.
Some of the photography on that page, the Legacy of Harvey's Foolery, is black and white photography of that era of a lot of those bands. and you can almost taste the smoke in the air, the cigarette smoke, by looking at those photos. My eyes start burning just thinking about sitting in there in that smoky place.
So how many people could they jam into this place that you could get some, fairly big names?
I seem to remember the thing on the wall might have said 100 something, 15 or 50. But,
really?
But the stage side of that place wasn't very big. There's basically the bar side and the stage side.
Mm-hmm.
And that's my guess.
Well, that heritage room that we walked through, according to the requirements, they say 115 if you seat them. I think you can get more if you're standing. So I imagine this was a standing deal, right?
Mostly. There are seats, and they did a lot of graffiti and carving in the bench, the tables.
Yep, my name's in there.
Yeah.
No, actually, I carved my dad's name in there.
So there's some artifacts that are important. Those old tables and all the carvings in there. And the Bird has a similar thing going on with their tables now too.
Oh yeah, that was the case way back in the '60s. There was some carvings in there. I don't know if those are still around. That's a long time ago.
That room's always been set up the same, as far as you know, right? The Rubbles room.
Yes, yeah. And then upstairs there were some bunk beds and a place where the bands would sleep.
I heard about that.
And there apparently was a lot of graffiti from the bands when they were staying there, and we're not too sure of where those bunk beds went with the graffiti. We're afraid that they might have disappeared from history now with all those bands hanging around up there.
Mm-hmm.
But hopefully they still exist somewhere, all those autographs and stuff on those bunks.
So did you form Natalie's Love Kittens around this time? You're kind of a punk band, I guess, right? You would say?
Yeah, that was our open mic band back in 85, 86, with Mike Rise, who plays Mackinac Island and has done that for darn near ever. And Dan McCourt, who's from down by Bloomfield Hills, he has McCourt's Music Center. He's got some stores that he operates. And Clyde Sheets was with us too. And we were just an open mic band, but we do have some recordings from the actual Foolery, and we've been cataloging what other bands have been recorded in there. Because one thing I try to do is put the recordings into little music videos and put them on YouTube so they can be heard.
Yeah, I listened to your version of Message in a Bottle, which was, I thought, pretty good. Your vocalist did sound quite a bit like Sting.
Yeah, and that's Mike, and he plays guitar too, like a madman, left-handed like Jimi Hendrix, right-hand guitar.
Okay. Wow. So did you do other Police songs? I mean, since you did have their sound kind of down a little bit.
That was really probably our most popular song when people went crazy. And then we played some REM stuff and tried to get into some Psychedelic Furs, but we never quite got the groove of that stuff. But Mike would make mixtapes for us, and then we take them home and doodle along and figure out the song.
Well, I really like the Psychedelic Furs. I still do. Mm-hmm. Richard Butler, one of my favorite vocalists. Mm-hmm. Just out of curiosity, do you remember what songs you were attempting from the Psychedelic Furs?
Into You Like a Train, and we did have a recording of it, but it hurts my face to listen to it. So maybe I can improve that. But at the moment, the way I've got it mastered, it hurts my face a little bit to hear it.
That's awesome. So your bands mingled in with some of the nationals that came through there. Did you do any opening slots?
Nope, we were just in the bands I was in. We were just mostly open mic bands.
Yeah,
and then we played on campus in other incarnations, like we were the Neighbors' Kids, and we were also in a band called Must Use Bag. And I imagine that's a trash can reference, but what we found out in the years since is I was in these bands, but they misspelled my name, so I couldn't be identified until recently when we figured out that I was on these set lists in these various places. So they finally started spelling my name correctly, so now I'm realizing who I played with in these bands, and we couldn't remember their names.
Oh my gosh. That's awesome. What a history of college time,
Yeah, Matt Guitar Murphy played the Foolery. Harvey hired him. And he was there a couple times at least.
Well, who's the owner that was such a music enthusiast that he brought all these artists in? I mean, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, it's Harvey Vanier. So he's an individual in every way you can imagine. He brought everything from punk to the old guitar and blues greats over there. And he had poetry readings. There'd be a night every week where they'd have that. And he did a benefit for the ACLU. That was the kind of charity that he liked to support. And there's a plethora of photography on that page, The Legacy of Harvey's Foolery on Facebook. It's a deep dive. There's so much stuff on there.
He sounds like an interesting guy. How did he work it? What do you remember? Like $5, $10 tickets? How did he do it?
Actually, we were looking at the posters just the last couple days, and it looks like some of the things were $1.50.
Holy cow!
But we have a plethora of posters that list the prices for the various shows on there too, on that page on Facebook. And also local bands. That was our jam band, that bar. That was basically where we had to play.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I'm assuming Harvey is no longer with us.
He's with us. In fact, we had a bar reunion in 2009, I think it was, and it was in Blanchard, and they rented the whole the party structure at the Blanchard Park, and they had camping and everything, so people could park in the yard, and they wouldn't even have to drive home after drinking off the keg and everything. Mm-hmm. But they had a lot of the bands from the Foolery days that played at the Foolery reunion, which is 2009. And there's a video online of that Foolery reunion on YouTube too, of the bands being recorded.
You still talk to him?
Harvey and I don't talk to him personally, but he doesn't get up here very often. It doesn't sound like there's going to be another Foolery reunion as far as things sound, but there's enough media on the internet now that that's kind of our Foolery reunion now.
Everybody meets online.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, looking at your Facebook page, one thing that stood out to me was the Magnetite Chronicles.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
All right. Okay, Magnetite Chronicles. Where did you get interested in magnetite? And tell us a little bit about this.
I didn't know what it was. And because I spent so many years on this theater board, it just about drive you crazy if you didn't do something else with your time. I'd go up and I'd snorkel alone in Lake Superior looking for rocks. And you can get away from everybody if you snorkel alone in Lake Superior, because most people aren't crazy enough to do that. Yeah. And so I'd find these stones. Some people call them turtle stones, although that's just a colloquialism. That's not really what they are. But I collected them, and I had them for years, and I knew it was fascinating stuff, but all of a sudden, one day I just decided to try a magnet on it, and darn right, it turned out to be magnetite. And so that was my fascinating material that I have around the house. And so I made a page on Facebook called the Magnetite Chronicles that deals with, that has little video experiments with magnets on these stones, and magnets will move. It's strong enough sometimes, the magnetism on these rocks, where the magnets will scoot around as you pick them up. And so those are some of the video experiments I have on the Magnetite Chronicles page that's on Facebook.
So did you discover that there were a lot of other people out there that are fascinated with magnetite as well?
There are. And it's helping to dispel a lot of the myths about what it might be. You know, it's such a strange material that people start almost hearkening back to UFOs when they start talking about it, because it's just strange enough. But there's a theory that a lot of these pieces were morphed down when the Lake Superior material was by the equator, and it somehow changed the material to where it formed magnetite when that stuff was.
Oh, you're getting right into plate tectonics and yeah. All right, wow, okay. Well, they are beautiful. I don't know. Do you really call them stones? What would or I guess they're beautiful minerals. Would that probably be
I call it minerals.
Yeah. Okay.
And people ascribe all kinds of traits to them that aren't really scientific traits, but people sometimes think they might be artifacts of human carving when they're not human carved, but they have that look to them.
Yeah, they are. They have interesting designs, natural designs.
Yeah.
I was also interested, I kind of dug in to do a little reading on it, that you mentioned that magnetite might be an air pollutant as well.
It could be, yeah. In fact, it's everywhere. It's in our landscaping stones. If we go out and run a strong magnet over that, we'll find magnetite around where we live, and it's extremely abundant.
Okay.
But a lot of people don't know what it is until they really focus on it, and I didn't know.
And I guess you'd find it in the UP because that's where all the iron deposits were.
Yeah.
All the iron mining that went on.
Yep.
Was mostly in the UP. Yeah, that's fascinating.
So that's your side thing to your music then?
Yeah, well, I stopped snorkeling alone because Lake Superior's, probably not the safest place to do that. But I also solved my little magnetite mystery. So, and now that I'm no longer on a board, I don't have to go 200 miles away from people to relax. I can just relax in my own town and not have as much responsibility as being a board member.
How many years were you on the board?
I was at the Broadway for 15 years straight.
When did that end?
2015.
2015. Okay, because you said that you guys put all the shows you put through in the 90s. You were showing me a lot of the footage of that. Let's go into that. How did your career take the turn from the graduation in the 80s to staying in the area to do that? How did you become?
I opened a store downtown because my family's business was publishing, educational publishing, and I had a lot of extra stuff to get rid of. And so I ended up raising my daughter down at my store, but when she went to school, retail's boring. And I just would lock my doors and say, I'll be back at a certain time, and I'd go do civic projects. And I knew the realtor who had the theater for sale. And so she let me have the key. And this was when I was on the board for the Friends of the Broadway, which is the organization that still owns it. And we didn't know we were ever going to get the theater. We were just meeting at the library. But I had the key, and so I went in and figured out where the light switches are in the place. And that took a lot of work because there were a lot of phases of construction in the Broadway theater. And then I took photos, panoramic photos, because I have a panoramic camera that I used to do a lot of photography, especially back then. And that's how I got into the theater. And then it turned out that we ended up having our nonprofit actually acquire the theater. We got a donor to give us a down payment, and then we wound up with a $75,000 mortgage on that old theater.
Now, was that one of the original movie theaters in downtown?
It is.
Mount Pleasant?
Yes. Yeah. And it was owned by the Ward family. And the Broadway is opened in 1920. And then in 1935, the Ward family opened the Ward Theater, which is on Main Street.
Yeah.
And that place is in rough shape. Hopefully it sees better days. It needs some loving touch to bring the Ward
I went to many films in the Ward when I was at Central Michigan. And a few at the Broadway, too. I remember I saw Blow Up there at the Broadway, which was, wow, back in when that came out? 67, I think. Mm-hmm. That was quite the movie.
Oh, yeah. Well, I hear weird factoids. I hear people that I barely know tell me they saw Debbie Does Dallas there. And people just out of the blue will just tell me that.
Well, yeah, I did. So it went to a movie theater then a little later on.
Yeah,
okay.
They were desperate.
Yeah. Just off Broadway then, eh?
Yeah. Blue side of Broadway.
Yeah.
So was this like a community theater then, or did you bring in productions that were kind of like traveling around?
This was, I knew a guy called Paul Sears who worked downtown, and his sons play music in Michigan and elsewhere. And he decided he had the idea to have these concerts and get some sponsors, and he knew a lot of the money people downtown. So he pre-schmoozed a whole bunch of people that had the money, and then basically I'd talk nicely to them and go pick up the checks. And so it was Paul Sears' original idea to have some concerts, and I was chair of the concert committee, so it made sense that we went off to a strong start. And back then there wasn't much competition in our group for asking people for money, so we could go out and raise money for concerts and not have a whole bunch of other people walking in right after us asking them for money. So it was easier to raise funds back then.
What kind of concerts did you run at the Broadway then?
We started out with jazz festivals, and then we started to call it the Jazz and Blues Festival. And then in 2005, we had what we called the Mountain Town Music Festival. And we had a committee with people from various other organizations this time help us too with putting on our shows.
How many seats in the Broadway?
There were 499 when I was interviewed by a newspaper for the 2004 show. And some have come out since because the crowds aren't that huge anyway, and they kind of cleared some technical areas so we could put spotlights there and stuff like that and have an operator stand there. So a lot of the seats were taken out because we also needed to make some handicap seating area that wasn't there in the theater.
Oh, sure.
We got it.
Unheard of.
Yeah.
Well, did you do plays there too?
They do plays, yep. The children's theater is probably the strongest thing that's happening there. There's also grown-up theater there, and they show movies. They call it VHS night, and show movies there currently. And it's a place where the Broadway theater can be rented for weddings or funerals or whatever, almost anything somebody wants to do. And they're struggling. It's a nonprofit, and it's still owned by Friends of the Broadway. So if anybody has any cash that they want to shake to the winds, that would be a place where they could use it.
So did they pull all the seats out? You're talking about it as something for weddings, so it can't be like the old theater then, right?
It's they just go up on stage and they make do. They hang out in the lobby and have their snacks in the lobby or whatever they want to do. But when we first got it, we changed the theater seat upholstery, and what a theater expert told us was those are the Cadillac of theater seats is what are in the Broadway theater. You should not get rid of them. Don't trade them in for the new kind of theater seating. They're like built like a cast iron. So we changed the upholstery, and they had horsehair and straw in the upholstery.
Wow.
When we had the seat company.
Really, some old ones.
Yeah, had the seat company flip the upholsteries.
Well, that theater I was telling you about that we have here at the museum, they use original seats from the State Theater, which of course put $1 million into that restoration. But those 12 of the original theater seats are in our little theater. They also took the original carpeting, which was in remarkably good shape, and that's installed in there, and they have the Art Deco lobby lights, the shine I really love, and those are in there as well. So, yeah, they did a nice job in our little theater and maintaining, some historic part of the State Theater. I don't know if you've been in the State Theater in Bay City. Oh, they did a wonderful job of restoring that.
Yep, a decade ago probably when I was there.
Yeah, all the painting and everything they did, it was really fabulous. Because I remember as a kid going in that theater, and it was all, all that Aztec engravings and everything. It was all painted in one color, beige. The entire inside of the theater was beige. So, yeah, it's remarkable what they've done with the State right now. It's really brought out all the splendor of the original theater.
Oh, good. Yeah, the Broadway murals, they kind of look like an Elvis painting. The way they're supposed to be lit is black lit, and then they do pop like an Elvis painting. But the funny thing about the mural theme, they call them the Polynesian Adam and Eve, and she's showing, half of her cleavage. But the funny thing is that people think that the lady looks like a dude and the dude looks like a lady. A lot of people
dude looks like a lady.
Yeah. So that's the funny thing about the mural scheme there.
Right. But that was the original design in there, was the Polynesian?
That was the 1941 version. And then the 1920 version is also Polynesian. And because I've been up above the drop ceiling and I have photos of it, of the old murals, and they're more amazing. They've got a hill, which presumably is Mount Pleasant. The only mountain in sight when you're in Mount Pleasant is probably up there above the drop ceiling. And they've got, looks like natives with a fabric spooling it around in the wind on the old murals.
Oh, wow.
And so I've got some paint chips so we know what the colors are from up there, and got the color photos of the old murals too, which are the 1920 version.
Yeah, I don't remember those from back in the 1960s. That kind of thing. I don't know. Maybe they covered it up or it was painted over. I'm not sure what happened there.
Yeah, we're told that the original murals were painted by, or some of the murals by a WPA artist. It must have been the 1941 version, I guess. But yeah, they used to do a lot of mural work.
All the original murals were done during the 30s and during the New Deal. You're talking about Work Progress Association, right? Yeah.
A renovation happened in 1941.
Okay, wow.
Yeah. And Frederick De Lorenzo is supposedly the muralist who did one of the versions of the murals, is the guy named Frederick De Lorenzo.
Oh, okay. Jeez.
Yeah.
Well, that's nice that you're, people in Mount Pleasant want to maintain that.
Yeah, it's a struggle.
Yeah, well, like anything is, yeah.
Yeah.
When you were running the theater, was it booking the bigger festivals that you were talking about or big shows that kind of kept the money rolling in?
Our concerts never really made money.
Okay.
We raised $10,000 for live music over 3 or 4 years. But musicians deserve to be paid, and if they're willing to work for free, that's great. But musicians need to make a living, so we got the legitimate sponsors, and we just did that concerts going all out like that, doing festivals for 3 or 4 years.
Were you solely responsible for the booking?
I was the chair of the concert committee.
Right.
Yeah, I was.
Nobody else kind of...
Well, you have to convince the board.
Right.
To do something.
But you brought the ideas to the table.
Yeah. Yeah.
Tell us a little bit of the bands you chose and why you chose them over the years, because there's a lot of great photography and back history and the booklets you've provided us. Tell us about it.
We all know the mecca known as elderly instruments, and so I called down there and asked them advice on what bands we might be able to hire, and naturally they came up with bands of the guys that worked at Elderly Instruments. So Steppin' in It is one of the bands, and 2 or 3 of those guys worked at Elderly Instruments, and another one was those Delta Rhythm Kings, not to be confused with the Delta Rhythm Kings.
That's the story, right. Fred, right there. We were talking about it between us about those 2 different bands.
Yeah, and so I guess we all kind of ascribe ourselves to obscurity when we name ourselves after like the same name as another band. But so Ray got a hold of me, Ray Aylshire from those Delta Rhythm Kings, and said he was researching his own band. And he noticed I'd sent him a message on Facebook a while ago, and so finally I heard from Ray, because he was researching those Delta Rhythm Kings, his own band, Ray Aylshire, and he was a showroom manager at Elderly for, I guess, at least 20 years or something like that.
Wow.
Right.
And then you, not just those bands, but did you notice the tie of the sound that was coming from Elderly when they, it fits the CMU thing because, the Prairie Home Companion and all the shows that were on there. I noticed we were talking about that a little bit. Was it ironic to you, or did you this makes total sense to bring these bands to town?
It made sense, plus because I know Robert Barclay, the Duke of Juke, from being a photographer around Central, that he would probably host the band on his program, and so we arranged to have those Delta Rhythm Kings come up and visit his show on the Juke Joint. And there's a pretty raucous recording, which is in the Dropbox files, which I sent you, from Robert's show, recorded such that it is off my cassette, digitized. But they put on a wild interview, and I'm a little surprised the FCC didn't clamp down on him after the interview because it was so blue with Ray Aylshire and the stories he was telling.
We'll have to dig through that one.
Yeah, that sounds kind of interesting.
Wow. So did the radio have help with you in the show then at that point? stations?
Because I was able to talk all the local media into being sponsors.
Wonderful.
And I worked with the Morning Sun newspaper, so I was able to talk them into it for our events when we were really going rock hard, doing concerts for a whole weekend, which is an awful lot of music for for people to put on. It's realistically, you might not need a whole weekend of music to enjoy live music.
Yeah.
How did you do it? Did you? I'm assuming you sold individual tickets. Did you do like a weekend pass too, and then go through the whole thing?
We did that, and I partnered with CMU box office. So this was when the box office at Central Michigan was down in the bottom of the UC, and so I talked them into selling our tickets, and they'd print them and charge the buyers a service fee. So we were able to market them through CMU, even though we're not really CMU affiliated. We were able to make that a little bit of a hook in trying to sell tickets too by incorporating their box office.
Yeah, good idea.
It makes it easy for the students to get a hold of them too.
Yeah.
What was some of your favorite acts that you put together?
Well, the good memories from those days are the music.
Yeah.
The recordings that kind of surprised me and how well we did in getting some of those live shows were Steppin' in It. Their sets are pretty screaming. Those Delta Rhythm Kings. We've also had Earl Haynes, and this was stuff I dubbed off of some cassettes because somebody found these cassettes in the bottom of the file drawer at the theater.
It's gonna get to that. That was our story that you shared with me initially.
Oh yeah. So Tyler, who's on the board at the Broadway now, Friends of the Broadway, he found these cassettes that we'd squirrel away in the bottom of the filing cabinet so nobody would throw them away, and they drop down there and get lost down there. And so he found them not too long ago. So I digitized some recordings of Earl Haynes, who was a Mount Pleasant icon. He drove a big boxy car that said jazz on the front and a big license plate on the front, Earl Haynes. And the funny thing about Earl is that he is the subject of the McRae song Mr. Easy by Charlie Walmsley. Charlie wrote that song, and he, I guess, did a demo with the McRae brothers of Mr. Easy, and eventually wound up on Larry's album, is my understanding. Yeah. But Charlie has a big story on his website, Charlie Walmsley, about Mr. Easy and about Earl. And Earl's kind of a legend. He liked his Budweiser, and he'd come out and buy a Christmas tree from me at my Christmas tree farm, and he'd come when it was the end of the season, and you can get him cheap because he tells people he never made $12,000 or more in a year in his whole life. So he brought this Christmas tree to his house one year, and he started pouring 7-Up in his Christmas tree instead of water. And he'd keep it up until his birthday, and that frickin' Christmas tree budded in his living room.
He had the secret.
He got the secret, jazz and 7-Up, man.
The magic elixir.
What a story.
For all the Christmas tree buyers, we're going to pass on this. You're worried about all the needles dropping off? No.
Mr. Easy
7-Up.
secret.
7-Up is supernatural, man.
That's awesome.
So that's Earl Haynes. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
And then,
So Earl, what did he play? Was he a guitarist?
He's a guitar player. Yep.
And he would just perform by himself, so sort of like one-man band, or?
Well, in this case where we recorded him, he was there with his friends Charlie Walmsley and Steve Roth, and so that was the incarnation when Earl was there. And of course, Earl, he's an old-time guy. He will make sure you pay him up front, and he, like Earl's going to do, he insisted on being paid up front, which is right.
Uh-huh.
So that way he doesn't get ripped off.
Incredible. That was Mr. Easy. I was waiting for you to tell that one. And so you come across that cassette in the bottom of those drawers. And
Tyler did, and then he brought it out, and I digitized some of those cassettes.
And they're all on YouTube, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Is that the only spot you can find them right now?
It is.
Yep.
And I come up with, just today, I came up with another recording that I hadn't shared earlier of those Delta Rhythm Kings, where they do That's What You Do to Me, and a song that they do called Let's Do It Like Monkeys. And it's a raucous song. So just today, I perfected the sound to make a video of those two songs they recorded
Wow.
So there's a little more yet to come out.
So do you have a little studio you're doing this out of, or just?
Just at home.
Yeah,
Just at
cool.
home. I got bought the interfaces to digitize music and get it clean and crisp, and so I figured out the methodology for doing that from
Wow.
cassettes, and then I'll do some noise cancellation and take the tape hiss out and try to clean it up some.
Do you know if any of those recordings? Now this will be before you did your own shows, but from the 80s at the Rubbles, at the Foolery, were any of those recorded? There's so much, like everybody thinks somebody played there. Is there any, other than some of the few photos, is there anything else that's available?
There's a list of bands that's on the page, The Legacy of Harvey's Foolery, and it is a massive list of bands that Harvey hired. These aren't the local bands, but they're the bigger name bands. And so on that page, The Legacy of Harvey's Foolery, there's a giant list that's incomplete of the bands that he hired. And so it's encyclopedic. He spent a lot of money bringing people to this.
Now, is there history from the late 70s on that website?
There are people contributing that played there. And,
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I would be there every week to see Nimbus. That was my go-to bar and band, Nimbus.
Nimbus.
Aha.
Nimbus, yeah.
I heard of them.
But there are contributors on that page
Okay. I'll have to check it out.
from the late 70s, too.
Yep.
Incredible. Wow. And did you put up that page? Is this the page that you started?
Somebody else started that, but I've it gives me a place to put all this media that I converted to digital. Otherwise, there'd be almost no place.
It's two separate stories of local music scene there that's just come together, and one after the other. It's I love it. I mean, that's how you connected with us, by like, you wouldn't believe this history stuff I've got. I'm like, oh, this is great, man.
Yeah. So part of researching this stuff at the Broadway is that I get to go spend time at the Clark Historical Library at CMU, because that's where I took all my material. So if I ever want to write something or research it, I have to go to the library, which is a perfect place to hang out. But the irony is, in order to do my own research, I go to the library now. But the Clark Historical Library is a neat place, and they've got a lot of stuff online too, a lot of resources.
Did you play there, you said, Fred, at Foolery back in the day?
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
What bands was it?
Well, it was with Andy Cohen, but I think I'll have to look up that website. I think we played there as Lazy Lester and Loaded Dice.
With Andy and Lazy?
No.
Oh, both
With
bands.
Lazy Lester and Loaded Dice.
Oh, wow.
You know, that was our backup band. But I
Yeah.
did so many gigs at that time, I can't remember. I know we played in Mount Pleasant a number of times, mostly through Robert. If we were there as Lazy Lester and Loaded Dice, then Robert had something to do with it.
Yep. So I got to know Robert because I had my panorama camera, and I would go and do events at Central and get up on the lift in the end zone and do the full stadium photos, because most people didn't have a camera that was going to do that. And so I do it for free, but that's how I got to know Robert when he worked at CMU Public Relations. And so I'd take pictures that wind up in their media guides for their football games or whatever sport I felt like going and shooting.
You're a good tie. We just recently had Robert on the show. We've also had Tom Ball and Mike Johnson a couple times, Larry McCurry and Charlie Walmsley. All have been on our show.
Oh, yeah.
So it's a nice little piece at bringing you in here to fill a little bit more of that story.
Yeah. You got Robert. I saw the photos, so that's a big score.
Yeah.
You did well getting him.
We're proud to have him here. Well, that isn't out yet, but by the time this one runs, so you'll be able to hear it.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, I actually learned new things from him being here.
Oh, yeah.
Because he's not, talks about his personal life that much.
He wrote me and said he loved, I'll take this off edit, but he says, I had loved that show, Scott. Thank you. He just sent me a big thank you for us.
Well, good. Yeah, that was a good one.
Well, Steve, tell us some more about your band. I mean, you have this incredible story that you shared with us as a little sidebar of a band that you played. Was it Basin in the 90s?
Oh, yeah. Well,
with a guy from...
There's a guy from Midland.
Yeah.
He's not the restaurant magnate that has the place named Bob Evans. He's another one. He's another guy. And one of the things that happens when you answer a want ad is that sometimes you end up on adventures that you didn't know were ever going to happen. And so he lived in Midland, and I went over and met with him, and he needed a driver and a bass player. So we wrote down some songs, and I went home and we planned these trips, and it turns out that my career path was a really strange one, because I found out I was playing bass for a pimp.
That's wild.
And he just straight up told me. I was doing his driving for him, so I guess he figured I should know. And so, yeah, that was a wild time.
A different farm for Bob Evans there.
Yeah.
Down on the farm.
Yeah,
Different crowd.
We went to a farmhouse. We went to a weird farmhouse, and I survived it, you know.
So you didn't have to bring the girls with you, did you?
No, I was glad to get away from them. They were all sisters, and they were known as the Simple Sisters. That was what I was told, and that's not incorrect. There was some simplicity going on there, but it was not a scene that I never thought I'd wind up in. And then we wound up in another gig in Wolverine, and we got fired. And me and Bob, and we were on fumes in Wolverine, Michigan at night.
There you go.
And everything's closed.
Wolverine, Michigan. That's the home of where band gets fired. This is a great story.
So we lost our place to stay, because even though we went and looked at it, it was great. We couldn't play worth a shit because we never practiced with each other. And so we were out there, and we drifted on fumes to the next gas station, and we managed to get a beer. And then managed to get all the way home, and just to celebrate the occasion, he asked me to buy him a Hardee's hamburger when we got to Midland, because since I'm a bass player and his driver, I guess I might as well shovel up some food. So that was that was part of our interaction. I wish well for Bob. I just don't know what he's up to anymore.
Yeah.
How long did that last?
Just a couple months.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the drummer and I would hide in his car with his girlfriend when Bob would do solo sets. We'd just go sit in the car to get away from the girls and stuff and get some peace in there.
So the girls we're talking about the girls that he was pimping for.
The sisters
would be in the bar, working the crowd.
Simple Sisters.
And the way to get away from them was go sit in the car.
That's the name of the band, Bob Evans and the Simple Sisters.
Yeah, jeez. Wow.
We're bringing a lot of stuff to light today.
There we are.
Hello, Midland.
Another side of culture. But yeah, Lakeville was the town we went to first, where I saw that crazy scene.
Wow.
Lakeville, Michigan.
Is that the last time you played bass?
Yeah, I became more valuable as a photographer to people, and as a guy with the equipment and the 4-track recorder and stuff. And I wasn't that great a bass player, so they would rather see me taking photos anyway. So that's where I became more valuable, is in the dark room and taking photos. We spent a lot of time developing photos at Central, at school.
Your Facebook page said that you did TV production for the United Methodist Church in Mount Pleasant. What did that involve? Were you shooting the services? Or?
Yeah. And we wound up doing 2 services a day eventually, and then I'd take the media over to the public access station and drop it off after church, and that was that job.
Okay, you didn't do any editing or anything like that. You let them
not on
take
purpose,
care of that.
but there was one time where I thought I would have to, because they didn't have air conditioning at one time, and there was an industrial fan behind the podium, and ladies would get up there, and we've all waited for the fat lady to sing, but ladies would get up there at that podium, and then an industrial fan would be on behind them, and their dress would start billowing up towards their shoulders. I thought I might have to do some editing. But they got their air conditioning fixed now. But that was one of the episodes where I thought I might have to.
Different kind of church.
Yeah, wow.
Hey.
But I still do stuff for MAC TV at City Hall, which is a local public access station, and run the controls when they have their city meetings and stuff, and ride that pony for a few hours every meeting.
Okay. That can't be the most exciting gig in the world, I wouldn't think.
Well, it's more exciting because Zoom made everything more error prone. in broadcasting. In there, Zoom is at the head of the broadcasting line now, and if Zoom's not happy, nothing else is going to work down the chain of events if Zoom's not happy.
Okay.
And Zoom comes up with a lot of weird updates and introduces errors into the computer where it's sitting, so we show up and find out that it's not working right. So Zoom has added a big layer of complexity onto.
Is that an editing software?
Zoom is streaming online meeting software.
Oh, okay.
But
So you're streaming it live then, right?
yes,
Yeah.
and from Zoom it goes to YouTube, and then if everything works right, it winds up on the cable system.
I wasn't even thinking that kind of Zoom. I thought it was like, first I thought you meant a person, then I'm thinking something else.
Oh, and you have the brand of microphones. Zoom
Well,
too.
that's a Zoom recorder right there
Oh,
that we're
yeah,
doing
yeah.
it on. But yeah, I was like, yeah, okay, I get you. Our meetings are on Zoom all the time through COVID there. Yeah.
But yeah, it complicates everything Zoom does
Yeah.
because it fails so often. And
Yeah, I agree. I've done a few presentations on Zoom, and it always seems like there's something that always goes wrong. And you're out of, you can't control it either.
I just
kind of
had
a
a
helpless.
Zoom meeting with my cardiologist last week. And of course, I was on 15 minutes earlier. And there I am, and everything worked. I could see myself, I could hear myself. As soon as he came on, I disappeared. And I said, "Can you see me?" And he said, "No, I can't see you, but I can hear you." And that's good. So
Yeah.
I could see him perfectly.
Yeah, as long as at
So-
least you got through the meeting okay. But yeah, there's always something that seems to go wrong on those
Yeah,
things.
it's one of life's great mysteries,
Yeah.
like George Carlin talks about.
So, do you have any? You're more of an archivist now when it comes to the music in the past.
That's
You're
true.
no longer part of putting anything together or playing anything.
Well, I have an endeavor that I refer to as Sasquatch Cred, and that's my little one-man band recording project, and some of it's on YouTube. But I play guitar and various instruments and just recorded them, especially during the pandemic. But I've got quite a few instrumental stuff on YouTube under Sasquatch Cred, but it's sort of being an introvert, I can identify with Sasquatches, and trying to get away from community theater, I can identify with Sasquatches too.
Yeah, I've went on that and listened to some of your instrumental pieces, and that's strictly just for you. Then you're not putting anything else on there, right?
That's true.
So far, anyway.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
When I want to doodle around, I'll do some more.
Okay.
What year did you say you graduated at CMU?
90,
90. Okay.
and then Mount Pleasant High School in 83.
Okay.
Did you
Cool.
go to Mount Pleasant High School?
Yes. Well, when I went, I did a lot of skipping of school too. That's part of the legend. It's materializing. But yeah, I did go. But I wasn't into photography or photography back then. I was just programming computers for the Apple II, writing software. So I'd skip school legitimately and then go work on the computer. So I wasn't into cool things like yearbook or anything.
That's
publishing.
I was heading back to the question of, did you take any photos of those bands that came to the Foolery? Too.
I didn't, but there's such a plethora of good photography on the legacy of Harvey's Foolery page that it's thick with black and white photography.
It's cool that everything's coming together and there's people contributing. That's cool.
Yeah, so we may not get together physically again, but yeah, there's a lot of media.
Is there any memorabilia from the bar that's around? Anybody save anything that from those days?
A lot of posters have been posted on that
Okay,
that page
that's
on
good.
Facebook, and yeah, and a lot of photography. And there are links to a lot of live recordings at the bar too now that the bands that have hooked up on there have posted, so people can listen to the actual shows. Some of them.
Okay, we'll have to definitely put that link on
Yeah.
the show.
Yeah.
so
Last
people
time I
can
think
check
I
that
played
out.
there was 2007 or 8, maybe 9. But I've done about 5 or 6 over the years there.
Oh,
I had a little run there for a little while, but It was in the aughts, and it was like if they had a radio station thing from 98.5 come to town, it'd be a good show. But other than that, there was just the regulars there kind of thing. And then you go home with $30, you know.
Oh yeah,
like, oh man,
it's not a big tourist town really. You know?
Right.
Yeah.
I spent a lot of time putting posters up all over CMU back in the day prior to Facebook, you know, putting posters around to play though.
Yeah, we did a lot of that too.
That's where some of the good photos of the posters you show them. Man, there's some cool stuff.
These would be primarily handbills, right?
Yeah,
Not the classic.
Not real
poster,
posters,
yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Just handbills. You'd staple all the.
Yeah. And I was a
Poles.
photographer for a band in the Foolery era called Pan the Sirens, and I was did a lot of photography for them that wound up on those posters, and that's why I have so many of the Foolery posters in my collection. Is they're related to the band Pan the Sirens, who were roommates of mine in a couple places we lived. But that's where I became useful as a photographer more than as a bass player.
Well, thank you for all your contributions, Steve. We appreciate having you on here, man.
I appreciate it. So yeah, those recordings at the Broadway are on YouTube so far, and they're on the Spinning Lens channel, which is my channel on YouTube.
Thank you for sharing all these details.
And Spinning Lens is probably the only way they're going to find them easily. The series is live at the Broadway, but Spinning Lens would be the quickest way on YouTube to get to where they are without finding a bunch of false results.
All right. Steve, Swart, thank you so much for coming in, man.
Yeah,
All right,
Steve was great.
All right, appreciate
Great
it.
meeting you.
Thanks.
On behalf of our hosts, this podcast wouldn't be here without generosity of the Bay City Historical Museum, which hosts the Rock and Roll Legends Hall of Fame. We'd also like to thank all of our guests, and especially to the listeners. The MMHP is found at 989.network, or where all podcasts can be found. You can find updated information as well as Dr. J and Sir Fred's Picks of the Week on Facebook. Also on Facebook, check out Mr. Mike's Local Music Live series and Scott's Mid-Mitten 15 from Harvest Canteen Studios, featuring one-on-one interviews with Michigan music artists. You can connect with Scott on the web at scottbakermusic.com, Dr. J at michiganrockandrolllegends.com, Sir Fred at fredrife.com, and Mr. Mike on YouTube as Mr. BT1. That's MRBTEE and the number 1.
On behalf of us hosts, Dr. J, Sir Fred, Mr. Mike, and myself, we'd like to thank Mr. Eddie Switek, the voice of the MMHP and the 989. Cool, man. Thank you.
Yeah.
You said you gave a lot of your research to the Clark Library?
Oh, yes.
Because I've been thinking of that myself.
Well,
I have 2 books out on local
yeah.
musicians.
And you've got a CMU tie, right? You have a tie to CMU?
No.
Okay, but
they turned me down.
they'll eat that. They'll eat that stuff up, I think. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah, music history. You've got stuff like almost nobody
It's
else
all
has got.
mid-Michigan.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, I was wondering, when 3 of us went to Detroit, we talked about getting an archive for what we're doing here, even if it's something to tie into here, because we're all here. Between what he's got, what Michigan stuff you've got, knowing what Gary's got, which is some of it's here, and the stuff I'm compiling all these years, I would love to know that we had a place to put all this stuff. Mm-hmm. You know,
Exactly.
so especially you know.
I go to estate sales every week, you know, and I hate. Well, I don't mind it now, but I used to hate going through somebody's house. You know, I felt weird. Mm-hmm.
Me
and
too.
I don't want that happening to all my friends.
Yeah.
People that come
Go
through
to one place.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, I think the Clark Historical Library at CMU would be a good place to consider.
I'll have to check that out.
They have a whole collection of some manufactured housemaker in Michigan, and that's one of their collections is their old documents. So music is certainly something they could focus on, and with all the stuff you've got, they'd be silly not to be interested.
I was looking at nonprofits myself. I was putting something together like that Oregon did for their own state music scene, and they've got a library involved. They house all the recordings they can find tapes from the line recordings to the reels to the 8 tracks to the cassettes, vinyl, CDs to digital, and all going right there. You know, everything that state tries to somehow they keep funding coming in to keep all that. That came to me after we got home that day, talking about how are we going to store all the shit that we got all these years. And I mean, thank God for Gary's got this great idea here. But I mean, your collection of Michigan stuff alone and your archives is great. You know, it's unbelievable.
Well, I got even more.
You're always getting even more.
But I'd be glad to wander over to the Clark Library with anybody that wants to go talk to them.
Yeah, I'll get a hold of you sometime.
And there's
Come
some
up there.
Okay, there's some bankers boxes that I've donated. They're about to process all the stuff from the downtown theaters. They're about to go through it. They haven't gone through these banker boxes yet, but they're about to start, the guy says.
And they have some real historic books there, don't they? Really old
Yeah.
historic books.
Yeah.
See, I have my Mid-Michigan music archive, and then I have my blues. So they're two separate things.
And is your
The
publishing
blues
stuff
may
in
be
your blues?
somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
But
And the blues
Maybe
is a
not.
lot of your stuff you've got publishing too, right? You want the publishing for some of it?
yeah,
Yeah, which is important.
yeah. My last royalty check was $5.86.
Yeah, me too. Today,
Oh,
five.
today?
Yeah, I
Oh,
just looked.
maybe I should be
BMI.
expecting
BMI
one.
put
Were you buying
287.
drinks tonight with this windfall?
No, this happened months ago.
One came in today. I see BMI come into my bank today. $2.87 twice. One as a writer and one as a publisher.
Whoa.
Yeah, the big 3 month stretch there.
Yeah, I made a penny off of streaming so far. I'm
A
rolling
penny.
in.
Woo-hoo.
Yeah, my first penny.
Yeah, well, Bobby Balderrama told me all about that, about how to make money through Google on YouTube. Because I have one, and I didn't videotape it, someone else did, but I asked permission to use it to book him at a European festival, which happened. And so anyways, one of Sugar Child Robinson's, there's over 600,000 people that looked at it.
Really? Wow.
And so I went to my Google dashboard or whatever it's called the other day, and it's still at $35, and they won't pay until it gets up to 100. So it's been at 35 for like 3 years.
That sounds
So
like the
I
new
just about
Spotify
give
deal.
up on
Yeah,
it.
they're waiting for you to pass. Right? They
Yeah,
don't have to pay.
right.
That sounds like Spotify. If you don't make $100 and everything now, they're not going to worry about paying you out.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, that's a new Spotify rule thing that started January 1st.
Well, I could see the guy who collects my publishing for me. He he doesn't take much, like 2%. So he doesn't make a lot off of me, but he has a lot of publishing companies.
Fantastic.
He used to
man.
work at Harry Fox, and then when Harry Fox started charging publishing companies monthly, like myself, who I wasn't even making that much. So he branched off and started his own company. And I just went to him, and I've been with him for 15, 20 years now.
Cool.
Out in
I
New
dealt with
York
Harry
City.
Fox and some other stuff with Dick when he was in the studio.
Well, he collects from Harry Fox, too. So.
Yeah.
Oh, you know Tim O'Brien, too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he produced the Northwoods Improvisers live video DVD.
Oh, yeah.
And he produced my first record,
Oh, yeah.
my first solo album, Between Seasons.
Aha. Yeah, he recorded some more shows at the Broadway, and so I'm hoping that he'll be able to get those
He is a great guy.
to where they're listenable.
We cut that whole first album at his mom's house in Mount Pleasant.
Oh, yeah.
One of the first big Pro Tools rigs, and he had it all set up. And
Oh, yeah.
we drove out there for 3 or 4 weekends and just banged it out. And
Yeah, he recorded Northwoods Improvisers with Frug Z-Bay. That's one of the recordings I hope he's able to score. And
Yeah.
also Marcus Belgrave's tribute to Louis Armstrong. That show that he
I
took
remember
on.
that.
So he has that too, and I think that one he's mastered already. So that might be the easier one for him to come up with.
I hope
Pretty
he-
much anything with Marcus Belgrave sells
Yeah, yeah.
in a collector's thing.
Yeah.
Market.
Yeah, there was some cool stuff. There's that was a hub. Mount Pleasant was a strange hub for and because of that guy booking blues and punk,
Yeah.
I mean, and then you got the ritzy radio station.
Yeah.
It brought a different crowd that filtered through that part of Michigan, and
Well, then
it went from there to Interlochen, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And
Well, it's a
Robert
college
started
town,
the
too,
Zydeco Cajun Festival, so that brought in
Yeah.
thousands of people.
Oh, yeah,
for
Night of-
that type. You know, we played that at twice.
Oh, yeah. Night of Louisiana.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it seems like you and Robert could have some good conversations on his show sometime, too.
I've been on it twice.
Yeah. Yeah.